gentlemen. Thanks for joining us again. This is Chris Dorn with XenTegra, practice lead for network. This is episode 7 of our Fortinet journey. And today we're going to be looking at the EDR solution from Fortinet. So FortiEDR for endpoint detection and response, and chatting a little bit about that. So with us today, our special guest, Patel, and also joining us, Shane Colgan and Garrett Brown from Ingram Micro. And from the XenTegra side, we have William Grayson joining us as well. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks for being here on your Friday with Hurricane Ian circling around the coast here. Hope everybody's staying safe and dry. But that, even though there's a hurricane out there, we still have to talk about and think about how we're securing our endpoints. And part of the Fortinet fabric, of course, is that we have hardware and software, endpoint back all the way to the core of the switching infrastructure that we look at with the Fortinet solution stack. And then I thought this is a pretty good opportunity based on a lot of the customer discussions that XenTegra's been having recently to chat about EDR and see how that can integrate into folks' existing infrastructures and how it kind of plays into the security fabric with Fortinet. So I think basically we could look at the EDR, at a high level. What are the capabilities that are required from an EDR solution? And that kind of comes back from being able to detect the security incidences, containing those incidents at the endpoint, and then, investigating security incidents, and then providing some kind of remediation guidance. So with that, I see a lot of endpoint solutions and they all seem similar, but a little bit different. So, Kinjal, if we could chat about this a little bit more and maybe a little bit of history around the FortiEDR solution and how it came to fruition, I think our listeners will get a lot out of this. So thanks again for being here, guys. And yeah. So how's it going?
Great.
Good.
Okay, so so let's begin with a little bit of history on the EDR side, and especially the FortiEDR, right?
Okay.
It's quite a buzz from a couple of years. Last couple of years, industry has seen so many different attacks, and those attacks will lead to a catastrophic situation within organizations where the data was exfiltrated out of the organization, or I would rather say, encrypted in the form of, not being able to get access, and the organizations were held to, pay some kind of a ransom, right? So these kind of advanced threats and, digital innovation continue to transform, the corporate and the public networks at an unprecedented pace, right? Some of the most dramatic areas of innovation were happening at the ever-expanding, the edges of the network, right? Next generation firewall and devices, which could basically lead to block certain kind of traffic and look into traffic at the edge level. But at the same time, some, these kind of advanced threats targeting the endpoint devices, including like a fileless, malware that executes directly into the memory space, and increasingly targeted ransomware, right, are exposing organizations to an increasing risk through their endpoint devices. So this called a need for, at Fortinet, we were building a product portfolio. If you go back into the history of Fortinet, we did have, next generation firewall, looking at the aspects onto the firewall level, whereas also there are corresponding, lineage devices. But then, for looking at the fileless kind of an attack, that's where we thought that it requires a need of an EDR kind of a product into our product portfolio. Our eyes fell onto this company called Ensilo back in the year 2019, is where the entire acquisition with the EDR company Ensilo happened, and we transformed into our Fortinet Security Fabric portfolio, the entire product was introduced to work with different Fortinet products over here.
Okay. So out of like the whole suite, what 54, 56 products, this is one of like the two, I believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that was kind of consumed by Fortinet and then tweaked to work within the Fabric space.
Correct. So there were many other products. So we started integrating, initially we began to start integrating the product with the firewall side. And then it also has now support for integration with many other Fortinet security products that we have on the portfolio, right from the firewall to the next solution to, we also do support many other different vendors. So today, if you do not have probably a FortiGate firewall, it can also be integrated with your third-party vendor. So wherein we are able to pull on the threat detection events and being able to pass it on over to those different aspects of the edge firewalls too. So now, as an organization, you do have a visibility on the traffic. If an endpoint is moving out of your network and has got compromised, that information is shared with your existing infrastructure, and that infrastructure is now able to see if any such kind of traffic is intercepted onto their levels. They can protect the devices which are behind those firewalls or devices.
Okay. Gotcha. So kind of if there is action that needs to be taken on those endpoints, is it kind of like a playbook that's written into the EDR solution to identify those risks and then perform some kind of action against it automatically?
Absolutely. So the beauty of the EDR product is that it hooks onto the kernel level of an operating system, which means that now it can see anything and everything which happens onto the operating system. This is where it would be the major differentiator between traditional antivirus engine product and the EDR. So FortiEDR stands different, wherein it hooks onto the kernel of the operating system. Any read attempt to any file, any write attempt to any of those files are going to be processed through the kernel of the operating system, which means that now EDR will listen to the EDR agent sitting on those operating systems, will listen to all the noise that happens onto that particular operating system. With FortiEDR, most of the advanced technology is inbuilt with the FortiEDR, with the ability to identify different kinds of traffic, different types of characterization on the files. We can identify, if there is an application which is unsigned and applications which is signed by some other, non kind of a malware kind of an activity, and also in the event, if the malware circumvents all those, attack release surface that you have built into your ecosystem, there are different mechanisms to understand, and they are definitely controlled by the playbooks. So playbooks identifies the security events, and that is classified into different categories. This classification is obtained based on, the way the security event is identified. Those basically are classified into a malicious activity or a suspicious activity, or if it sees a potentially unwanted program identified onto that operating system. And further, those classification has remediation actions automatically into it. So it can go to an extent to terminate the process if it is seeing that a program or a malware is trying to multiply within itself onto the operating system on the processing side. It is creating a process from a child process and multiplying and spawning different processes. It has the ability to automatically terminate those processes. Not only that, it stops there, but it also cleans up the operating system by deleting those remnants of those malware files onto the operating system. Any persistent data seen is also cleaned up by these playbook automation tasks that is connected with the FortiEDR solution.
Gotcha. Okay, does that integrate? So I take it there's an agent that's a lightweight agent that's placed on the endpoints then. And yeah, let's talk about the infrastructure a little bit. So their agent on the endpoint, and then are we integrating and reporting back to a like a controller machine on premise, or is this centralized in the cloud? Kind of maybe you could talk about that a little bit more, like a deployment of it would look like at a high level.
Absolutely. So there's this, FortiEDR collector. We call it as, some call it a sensor, some call it an agent. But this sensors, this agents, this collectors sit on the operating system. So we have a wide varied, support for the operating system. We are operating system agnostic, which means that the agent can sit on, a Windows-based operating system, Linux, Mac operating system. Even, we do support, the legacy operating systems, organizations who have not transformed yet. I do hear, from many of the customers that they have old legacy applications hosted on Windows 2003 servers. So our FortiEDR solutions even go back to support those kind of legacy applications and the operating system. It is a lightweight, super lightweight agent that is also one of the biggest differentiating point compared to other vendors. It consumes no less than 60 MB of your RAM memory space on your operating system. Super light, lightest of all the vendors, I could say. At any given point of time, the CPU utilization doesn't exceed more than 1 or max, 2% in any of the state. That's on the client side. On the server side, it is a cloud native, product, so which means that it is hosted on our SaaS environment. There is no infrastructure cost which a customer has to incur in deploying FortiEDR solutions. Once they purchase the licenses, they have an ability to access the portal, and that portal has an ability to make all different kinds of configurations that is to be passed on to the collector. Collector has encrypted connection from the agent to the cloud console, wherein it passes all the telemetry metadata that it sees onto the operating system.
Okay. Now, as an example, if there's a violation on an endpoint and the criteria is met to like basically isolate that endpoint because of the violation that had taken place. Is there an integration with like the sandbox, the FortiSandbox, to kind of put them in that isolation area, or is it more of like a disallow network access until somebody intervenes with it or takes a look at the alerts? Kind of how's that kind of come together if there's like a malware a breach or detection on a USB stick that somebody stuck into the machine?
Absolutely. So it does have multiple policies configured onto the endpoint. So these policies basically dictate on what different kinds of actions are taken. So for example, if it sees that there is a program which has circumvented all different kinds of checks, and still now that program is trying to encrypt some legitimate business files onto the operating system. So FortiEDR kicks in, the agent kicks in and stops and terminates that process, which is basically taking an action on encrypting those files. At the same time, it collects that information of the source from where did this process was initiated. So it has telemetry information where it can find that this is the source on the operating system where there is a piece of malware or a program, which is probably an exe file. It can take that file and send it across to your Fabric integration members, that is your FortiSandbox, right? So it can go and dump that file onto the FortiSandbox, and FortiSandbox can now further investigate on the characteristics of that file, what happened. It will detonate that file again into the sandbox virtualized area, right?
Gotcha.
Also, if there is policy where you can identify the USB media onto the operating system, so that also verifies whether this source is generated from the USB you can also have a control of what kind of USB devices are allowed to be able to plug into these devices, based on the manufacturers, based on different kinds of algorithms that you can perform checks onto that side too.
Okay, gotcha. So is there, it sounds like, so this can be deployed with an existing Fortinet fabric, of course. What if this is the only Fortinet product that a customer is looking at because they're coming off a competitor's edge firewall or a different fabric within their infrastructure? Is there any benefit to having like a FortiGate in there? Is there anything else you might see that might help to take this to the next level? Or is that like a negative point there?
No, absolutely. So by its nature, FortiEDR is a standalone product by itself. So it can be deployed without any need of any other Fortinet Fabric, devices. But it's always good to have, Fortinet Fabric devices like you just asked for FortiGate Firewall, because FortiGate Firewall and FortiEDR understands the operating system which is installed on the FortiGate firewall. It has an ability to dynamically update the firewall policy with this object and populating those objects with some vulnerable malicious IP addresses that it sees onto the endpoint. Let's say, for example, you and I working out from a home office, we went and one day we were working out of a coffee shop, and for some instance, our laptop, which has a FortiEDR collector onto it, got compromised, accidentally or by ignorance, and compromised with some kind of a malware. And the FortiEDR collector identified that information, blocked it, everything is done. However, that information now from the collector is sent back to the EDR console, which that console has an integration with FortiGate firewalls. So FortiGate firewall is now informed about the malicious addresses that the collector has seen outside of your network. So what it will do is FortiGate firewall will have that dynamic policy configured with those IP addresses. So now if your internal user behind the FortiGate firewall is connecting to a program which has those malicious IP address, FortiGate is going to intervene. I see these, you're trying to reach out to those destination IP address which are malicious. Your access is denied. So it kind of works in tandem with, Security Fabric members with FortiGate. But we haven't, we at Fortinet wanted to contribute to the society, so it does not just restrict this kind of integration with FortiGate firewall. Let's say today, you as a customer has a Cisco or a Palo Alto as well in your environment. FortiEDR can still send this information to your current firewall devices, and then you can have them, configure their firewall policies.
That's a very good point. And it kind of comes to mind that like if you already have an existing Fortinet Fabric infrastructure and you have like the native network access control, this would really like be one of those super insightful angles that could be taken to perform those kind of actions at the layer 2 and 3 to help protect it even at the ports. But you point out a good component there that it can still integrate with non-Fortinet vendors to give some kind of insight into it, but then you're kind of left to like how's that going to be handled by those technologies from those vendors? So I'm sure that's a little different across the board.
Right.
Very good. Garrett and Shane, have you guys been seeing from the Ingram side? You've been seeing customers looking at this and having questions about it in the past, in recent times, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. We've seen a lot of the conversations actually stem from just a basic ZTNA conversation. People start in that FortiClient endpoint protection. They may want something more advanced. We actually see a lot of people enter into that the EDR Lite actually. It's kind of the first entry point into that EDR that world. You have the Lite, then the EDR, and then the XDR. So you're really getting that discover and protect, and then people are really seeing that they want those extra protections, they want those responses, they want that the recording, the analysis, the threat hunting, that AI tagging, and then we kind of see a lot of people kind of getting into that spot also in the MSP space where they're able to kind of host this and get different kind of partners really involved and split this up and kind of they understand that there are some minimal order quantities and they have to kind of get past that part of it. But it is really nice to see that the conversation is kind of more fluid when people are realizing that ZTNA endpoint protection, then it merges right into this EDR product. It's been kind of great, kind of seeing those conversations kind of go into that route.
That's a good point. So it seems like this is kind of like the conduit to bridge, like just at performing proactively and reactively on the endpoints, and then getting into that automated kind of infrastructure where you might look at the FortiSOAR. That's kind of a goal I hear customers having in the future, but it takes products like this and deployments like this to get the insight to perform those kind of automations. Am I correct in kind of steering it in that direction?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of nice just because I mean the overall security fabric that Fortinet, does, and that's how inclusive it is and how everything ties back, especially to those root FortiGates and where we're tying all this back together. So we have seen that kind of progress that way, and it's led to some pretty good conversations. There is that lower order quantity that we have seen a lot of people actually jump into, and that really has that managed part of that MDR in there. So you're getting that discover, the protect, the respond, and the standard MDR, and that's really opening up some doors to take the pressure off of having to configure and do all that work yourself a little bit too. So we have seen a lot of people kind of go that route, and it is that lower quantity of 100 seats. So some people are starting with that, and then as they get comfortable, then they'll go up to the next size model. I don't know if people at Fortinet have kind of seen those similar trends, but that's kind of what we've seen over the last couple months, at least, from our side on Ingram.
Okay. And then I'm looking at some of the SKUs right now. I see that discover, protect, and respond and XDR. So it looks like there's quite a few different options here.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of, pick some of those different brackets, whatever you need a little bit more. Some are, that you get that discover, the protect. Some are getting protect and respond. Some are getting, the XDR, the MDR. There's different variations depending on what you need and kind of, what kind of automated remediation or automated playbooks and stuff like that as you get into those higher bundles to really kind of alleviate that constant monitoring or just analysis behind all that. Also, the reporting and stuff is really great as you're tying all this back together. Like we kind of touched on earlier, that reporting and that full security integration is really great when you have the FortiAnalyzer and some of those even in there too, just to really kind of see what's going on across your whole kind of deployment or environment.
Oh, good. So that's good points there, because I'm learning a lot here. So it looks like I see like the FortiEDR bundles that you might go into, in order to enable the XDR functionality. We really need to start leveraging the FortiAnalyzer, I believe. Is that true?
Yeah, we have
Yes.
seen. Yeah, we have seen that too, and I don't know if Kinjal has anything to add to that, but we've seen a lot of people kind of have very similar conversations when it comes to that analyzer. You getting all the reporting back and stuff, and they really want to see that automated stuff or the compliance side of things too, and see how everything's kind of been just kind of reacting and all the remediation and how that's kind of happening in the background. So it's happening everywhere from the SMB all the way through the enterprise space that we've kind of seen. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint where we're seeing it, but we have seen it in various size environments. So it's kind of nice knowing, even if you're not playing in the MSP space, you can still find some of those lower seat packages and still kind of, manage that entire environment.
It definitely, yes. I mean, very rightly said, Garrett. So, on the FortiAnalyzer space, when you see that FortiAnalyzer has an ability to connect with many other, Fortinet Security Fabric members, that is, it can connect, it can obtain logs from a, FortiWeb, that is a web application server, a firewall. It can obtain logs from a FortiMail. It can obtain logs from a FortiClient. It can obtain logs from a FortiGate firewall. So now with the EDR also connecting to the FortiAnalyzer and the ability of the analyzer to basically print out where the source of, indicator of compromise, basically identify where did the entire event, security event started from, if there is anything to be pointed out that, hey, a user clicked on an email which was email which has an attachment onto it, which had, some kind of a JavaScript running onto it. The FortiAnalyzer can, identify those source of the incident and then give you as an organization a breadth of information. Okay, EDR has done its part of protecting, but I need to mitigate, I need to remediate the source. So that's where the extended detection helps you to have those kind of facilities and programs into the organization.
Gotcha. And a little unique piece here with a lot of products are licensed on 1, 3, or 5 year, but I see here you guys also offer 2 and 4 year, which is kind of unique. So that's pretty cool. Not that you can't stack stuff by any means, but
right,
don't see that too terribly often. So yeah, that's nice. So we come back to the dashboard. We see everything in here. If a customer's kind of they're spending a lot of their time inside of the FortiGate dashboard per se, and to manage the switches and access points in the FortiGates. Is there any integration here that we might see information from the EDR environment translated into the FortiGate dashboard? That's
not
standalone.
necessarily at this point of time. We might not have a component visibly onto the FortiGate, security fabric, but it does definitely has an integration on the firewall policy. So you might not see an icon representing into the security fabric architecture design that the FortiGate today has to offer, but it definitely does, the integrations from the backend.
Okay, very good. Well, nice. Well, it looks like a pretty easy way to get it deployed and set up, and then check that off your list of things, action items that need to be tackled inside of the organizations. And again, I'm here and having conversations across the board, regardless of the size of the customer. 50 users to 5,000 plus. Everybody needs the same kind of protection and visibility to protect their users, protect their data. And this looks like quite an awesome solution. I'm sure there's some decent accolades that have been presented for it, as Fortinet's been kind of knocking it out of the park again in 2022 with the Gartner reports. This is a nice component, and very important fact there that we covered, that it can be integrated into an existing infrastructure as it's a standalone product. It could be an entry point into your Fortinet story and your journey. But with that, this looks pretty solid. So let's see. We talked about the agent a little bit, how it kind of plays with FortiClient. When I picture in my head the FortiClient protecting the signature based on the endpoints, providing the zero trust access to the resources that are needed. And then this sits on top of that and kind of complements that protection of that endpoint. So for our listeners, that's pretty important component there. And then, like you said, the playbooks, they're written up. I assume there's some canned ones that come with the product automatically.
Yes. So, the playbooks is basically, all populated with different kinds of, canned responses and how it's going to look under the classification of the security events, and automatically it is going to trigger an action based on the selections that you have made as an organization according to the policies of the organizations, right? So, yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, for everybody out there, we appreciate you listening. Definitely reach out to us to extend these conversations. XenTegra will work with you to identify the solution stack that best meets the requirements that you have in your EDR discussions, and then we'll work with the Fortinet teams to make sure that you're getting exactly what you need for the best price. And then we'll reach out to Garrett and team and get it shipped for you. So I thank everybody for joining. Garrett and Shane, thanks for joining for your first time, and of course to Kinjal for hopping on, being our special guest today. This was a very informative session. I think I got a lot out of it, and not an area that I've worked on too terribly often. So I'm looking forward to having some more discussions with our users and customers.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, guys, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.